با سلام، آنا نامجوفر هستم. کتاب امریکن انگلیش فایل 3 درس 9B رو با هم شروع میکنیم. درس 9B با وکابولری شروع شده و بعد میپردازیم به یک گرامر کوچیک که separable phrasal verb هست و در آخر listening و speaking. من اول از همه این separable phrasal verb رو براتون توضیح بدم. گفته که remember that many phrasal verbs are separable. میگه که یادتون باشه که خیلی از این phrasal verb ها که اصطلاحاً اینجا گفته phrasal verb یعنی چی؟ یعنی اینکه مثلا یک فعل بذاری و بعدش یه preposition داشته باشیم، مثل switch on، switch off، turn on، turn off. اینا phrasal verb هستن و میگه که remember that many phrasal verbs are separable. جدا میشن از همدیگه. یه سریاشون هستن که اصلا جدا نمیشن، یه سریاشون مثل این جدا میشن. For example, the object can go between the verb and particle. ببینید یعنی object هامون میتونن برن بین فعل ها و particle. ببینید این object همون the TV هست، اومده بین switch on or after the particle switch on the TV. یا میتونه بعد از switch on بیاد، پس میتونه the TV بیاد وسطش یا میتونه بره بعدش. حالا ببینید اینجا یک نکته خیلی مهم رو داره توضیح میده. However, if the object is a pronoun, it must go between the verb and particle. For example, switch it on. درسته. ببینید switch it ما به جای the TV گفتیم it. switch it on، switch it on. ولی اگه بگم switch on it کاملا غلطه. پس من میتونم 3 روش داشته باشم برای استفاده کردن separable phrasal verb ها. من میگم switch the TV on، switch on the TV یا switch it off. حالا مثال هایی که اینجا داریم به این ترتیب هست. میایم توی این قسمت پارت 3. من این رو ببندم. خب گفته match the sentences. Number 1, I changed the heat from 70 to 62 degrees. اینجا گفته I changed the heat از 70 آورده به 62. چی کارش کرده؟ کمش کرده. میتونه اینجا چی باشه؟ میتونه turn it down باشه. بذارین جواب رو چک بکنیم ببینیم درسته. turn it downه. خب اینجا جوابمون اینجا هست. I changed the heat from 70 degrees to 62 degrees. I turn it down. پس من میتونم بگم I turned the heat down یا میگم I turned down the heat یا میگم I turn it down. خب بریم بعدی رو ببینیم با هم دیگه. گفته که I disconnected my iPod from the computer. من دیسکانکت کردم آیپدم رو از کامپیوتر. حالا بخوایم کوتاه بگیم چی میگیم؟ میگم I unplugged it. I unplugged it. پس اینجا پارت E میشه unplugged. ببخشید پارت F. پس plug میشه وصل کردن، unplug میشه قطع کردن. I unplugged it. خب ببینید ایت رو آخر آورده. حالا number 3, I increased the volume on the TV. من ولوم تیوی رو بردم بالا. I increased the volume on the TV. Number 3 is part D. I turned it up. I turned it up. یا I turned the volume up. خب Number 5, I programmed alarm on my phone یا on my cell phone. I programmed the alarm. پس میگه که ست کرده، آلارمش رو ست کرده. I programش کرده. Program the alarm on my phone. خودتون قبل از اینکه اینجا رو نگاه بکنی خودتون حدس بزنین چی میتونه باشه جوابش. اینجا گفته I set it for 7:30 part G. I programmed the alarm on my phone or I set it for 7:30. یا I set the alarm for something. Set it. بریم شماره 6 رو بخونیم. من اینجا فکر کنم I pressed رو نخوندم. Number 4. I pressed the off button on the TV. I pressed the off button on the TV. من چیکار کردم؟ پرس کردم، فشار دادم دکمه آف رو به تیوی. خب چیکار کرده؟ خاموشش کرده دیگه. I pressed the off button on the TV. من دکمه آف رو زدم. خب باید بگیم switch it off یا I switched the TV off or I switch off the TV. پس 3 مدل داریم. I switch off the TV, I switch it off, I switch the TV off. خب number 5 هم که خوندیم. number 6 I put my phone charger into an outlet. I put my phone charger into an outlet. چیکار کرده؟ زده به شارژ. گفتیم اونجا unplug بود، حالا زدن به شارژ میشه plug. پس plug in unplugging. خب unplugged. و اینجا I put my phone charger into an outlet. I plugged it in. I plugged it in. یا I plugged the charger in. I plugged the charger in. I plugged it in. Number 7 I pressed the on button on my laptop. پس اومده آنش کرده. اونجا داشتیم I pressed the off button، حالا اینجا I pressed the on button. چی میشه؟ میشه switch it on. I switch it on. I press the on button on my laptop. I switch it on. I switch on the laptop. یا I switch the laptop on. I switch it on. خب پس I switch on it نداریم. بریم سراغ این قسمت. حالا یه دور دیگه اینا رو با هم بخونیم. I switch it off. I switch it on. I turn it down. I turn it up. I plugged it in. I unplugged it in. I unplugged it. و I set it for 7:30. خب اینجا بریم سراغ vocabulary و این عکس هایی که داریم. اول از همه خودتون برای خودتون شماره 1 تا 12 رو بنویسید، ببینید چیا میدونید از اینا و بعد بیاید دوباره گوش بدید. ما اینجا چی داریم؟ a mouse, a speaker, a USB cable, a keyboard, a flash drive, a plug, a remote control, a screen, an outlet, a switch, an adapter و headphone. خب headphones. number 1 کجاست؟ number 1 مون میشه a switch. پس ما به این میگیم switch. همینی که باش کلیدی که باش روشن میکنیم ما میگیم switch. number 2 is a plug. ما به این میگیم plug. البته این مدل رو توی ایران استفاده نمی کنم. ما باید بهش یه دونه آداپتور وصل بکنیم. مثل این شماره 10 ما باید از این مدل استفاده بکنیم. پس این شد an adapter. An adapter. number 3 headphones. Headphones. number 4 a remote control. A remote control. number 5 is a screen. A screen. number 6 نگاه کنین is a keyboard. میدونید دیگه. number 7 is a mouse. Is a mouse. And number 8 is a speaker. A speaker. number 9 is a flash drive. Is a flash drive. و number 10 an adapter. An adapter. And number 12 is an outlet. پس ما به اون سویچه میگیم، به اون کلیدا میگیم سویچ، به این که پریز میره داخلش پلاگین میشه میگیم outlet. Outlet. number 2 چی بود؟ a plug. A plug. پس میایم a plug رو میزنیم توی outlet میشه plug-in. plug-in. حالا plug رو میخوایم درش بیاریم چی میشه؟ میشه unplug. Unplug. خب و این قسمت هم خب تموم شد دیگه. اینجا چیز دیگه ای نداریم. بریم سراغ این قسمت. گفته how many devices do you have with the screens and which one do you use the most. جواب اینا رو خودتون سعی کنید بلند بلند برای خودتون تکرار بکنید که براتون جا بیفته. خب من زومش بکنم. Do you prefer to use a keyboard with or without a mouse? میگه که ترجیح میدین از کیبورد استفاده بکنید یا با ماوس استفاده بکنید. Number 3, do you usually listen to music with headphones or with speakers? از هدفون استفاده میکنید یا اسپیکر؟ همونی ببینید فقط جوابهای کوتاه ندید که مثلا بگید headphones. جوابتون سعی کنید بلند باشه. خب headphones چرا headphones؟ به خاطر اینکه خیلی راحت تره، به کسی آسیب نمیزنم، دوست دارم خودم فقط گوش بدم، دوست ندارم چیزی که من گوش میدم رو بقیه هم بشنون. و دوست ندارم مزاحم کسی بشم. I don't want to bother anyone and I would like to listen to my music on my headphones because it is so much easier to turn the volume up and I'd rather listen to music and my podcast myself because I know nobody wants to listen to others programs or others devices. خب how many remote controls do you have چند تا remote control دارین؟ Do you think you have too many؟ فکر میکنین خیلی دارین؟ How many prongs do plugs in your country have؟ میگه چند تا شاخه داره این پلاگاتون توی کشورتون، همونی که اون بالا توضیح دادیم. Do you need a travel adapter if you go abroad؟ فکر میکنید travel adapter نیاز دارید اگه بخواید برید خارج از کشور؟ In your house do you usually agree about what the temperature should be؟ فکر in your house معمولا توی خونتون do you usually agree about what temperature should be؟ موافقین با اینکه با هم به توافق میرسین که چه تمپرچری داشته باشین؟ or is someone always turning the heat or air conditioning up and down؟ یا یه نفر هست که مثلا کولر رو هی ببره بالا بیاره پایین درجهش رو. اینا موضوعهاییه که بهتون کمک میکنه برای سپیکینگ، صحبت کردن، چون که ماها متاسفانه نمیدونیم چی بگیم و اینها به همون ایده میده برای صحبت کردن. خودتون پس سعی کنید هی بنویسید، خط بزنید تا دستتون هم را بیفته. Listening and speaking. خب اینجا داره راجع به یک موضوعی میگه که یک خانواده هستن که میخوان یه جور دایت بگیرن، تکنولوژی دایت داشته باشن، دیوایس هاشون رو میخوان فکر میکنم دیسکانکت بکنن که ببینن میتونن مثلا زندگی بکنن راحت یا نه. گفته the winter of our disconnect Susan ماوشارت خیلی مهم نیست بخاطر اینکه اسمه سوزان ماوس هارت or something. خب اینجا گفته که how one family pulled the plug on their technology and lived to tell text tweet the tell. و اینجا این قسمت گفته که look at the book cover، این book cover and the review information. What do you think the book is about؟ فکر میکنین راجع به چیه؟ How do you think the three teenagers feel؟ و فکر میکنین تینیجرها چه احساسی دارن؟ حالا بریم این قسمت رو بخونیم، بعد میریم لیسنینگ رو گوش میدیم. The wise and hilarious story of a family who discovered that having fewer tools to communicate with actually led them to communicate more. پس میگه که این یک داستان جالب و هیلاریس خنده داره از یک خانواده‌ای که میخوان حالا از ابزارهای کمتری استفاده بکنن to communicate که باشون ارتباط برقرار بکنن. When Susan Mosshart first announced her intention to pull the plug on their family's entire collection of electronic gadgets for 6 months, her 3 kids didn't react at all. میگه که وقتی که اومد توضیح داد که بیاد تمام اون دیوایس هاشون رو کنسل بکنن و استفاده نکنن از الکترونیک گجتاشون برای 6 ماه، her 3 kids didn't react at all. اصلا بچه ها هیچ ریاکشنی نشون ندادن. Says Mozart, looking back I can understand why they didn't hear me. اصلا اونا منو نشنیدن. The title is a play on words. Shakespeare's play Richard III opens with the famous phrase, now is the winter of our disconnect. الان ماهیه که ما میخوایم دیسکانکت بشیم. Listen to part 1 of a radio breakfast show where the guests are discussing the book. Answer question number 1 to 6. اول بریم شماره 1 تا 6 رو بخونیم، معنی کنیم، بعد برگردیم به listening. Why did Susan Mosshart decided to do the experiment? چرا تصمیم گرفت که این آزمایش رو انجام بده؟ Was it just her children who were spending too much time using technology? فقط بچه ها بودن که خیلی از تکنولوژی استفاده میکردن. Who are digital immigrants and who are digital natives. Digital immigrant و digital native کیا هستن؟ What gadgets did Susan Musard families have to switch off? چه گجت هایی رو میخوان آف بکنن؟ کجا؟ What were they allowed to use? چه گجت هایی رو اجازه دارن که استفاده کنن؟ و how did she get the children to agree to the experiment? چجوری باعث شد که بچه ها رو راضی بکنه که این آزمایش رو انجام بدن؟ بریم پارت اول رو گوش بدیم. من اینو بیارم بالا که شما بتونید جواب هم بدید.
5.19 Part 1
And now it's time for our book of the week, which is The Winter of Our Disconnect by Susan Moshart. Jeremy, to start with, it's a good title, isn't it?
Yes, amazing. And it was a fascinating experiment and a good read.
Tell us about it.
Well, Susan Moshart is a journalist who's raising 3 teenage children. She decided to do the experiment after reaching a point where she felt that the whole family, especially her children, were all living in their own little worlds, with headphones on, plugged into their laptops or their iPods or their smartphones, and that they weren't relating to the other people in the family.
So it wasn't just her children who were permanently plugged into an electrical device.
Well, she admits that she herself was addicted to her phone and to her iPod and her laptop, and that she was constantly reading news sites and Googling information. But it was really her children who were totally dependent on new technology. In the book, she makes the interesting distinction between digital immigrants and digital natives.
What does that mean?
She describes herself as a digital immigrant. That's to say, someone who didn't grow up with digital technology, which is really anyone who was born before 1980. Her children are digital natives, which means that they were born after computers and the internet were already part of life.
Well, that's me then.
Yes. Well, the main difference, she says, is that digital immigrants use the technology to find information or to listen to music, but digital natives live and breathe the technology. So for them, living without it is like living without water, without electricity, in the dark ages.
What were the rules of the experiment?
The family had to live for 6 months without using any electrical gadgets in the house with a screen. So no smartphones, no TVs, no laptops or computers, no video consoles, and no iPods. They were allowed to use technology at school or at friends' houses or in internet cafes, and they were allowed to use landline phones. But everything else was switched off for the whole 6 months.
6 months? How on earth did she get the children to agree?
She bribed them. She told them that she was going to write a book about the experiment and that they would share in any profits that she made from the book.
Wow, that was very smart of her.
Okay, and now let's check all the answers here first, and then I will translate all parts for you. So, number 1. Okay. Number 1 is because the whole family, especially the children, were always plugged into a device, for example, their laptops, their iPods, etc., and weren't relating to the other people in family. گفت number 1 همون چی بود؟ گفته why did Susan Mushart decided to do the experiment؟ چون که کل خانواده مخصوصا بچه ها همیشه پلاگ into a device بودن. مثلا دیوایس هاشون چی بوده؟ لپتاپشون، آیپادشون and weren't relating to the other people in the family. اصلا با هیچ کس ارتباط نداشتن. weren't relating ارتباط نداشتن. Number 2, was it just her children who were spending too much time using technology? No, it was the whole family. نه کل خانواده بوده. whole family. Number 3, digital immigrant و digital natives. خب digital immigrant کسایی هستن که زمانی به دنیا آمدن که تکنولوژی نبوده ولی دیجیتال نیتیوز اونایین که زمانی به دنیا اومدن، یعنی بعد از اینکه تکنولوژی مثل کامپیوتر به وجود اومده. خب digital migrants are people who didn't grow up with digital technology. Anyone born before 1980s. And digital natives are people who were born after computers and the internet already existed. اینترنت وجود داشته بعد از کامپیوتر به دنیا اومدن. Number 4, what gadgets did Susan Moshart family have to switch off and where? At home, they had to switch off any electronical gadgets with a screen. هر گجتی رو خاموش کردن، مثل smartphone, TVs, laptop, computer, and game box and iPads. Number 5, what were they allowed to use? چی اجازه داشتن استفاده بکنن؟ They were allowed to use technology in a school or at friends' houses. or in internet cafes, یا توی کافینت میتونستن استفاده کنن یا توی خونه دوستاشون. And they were allowed to use landline phones, و میتونستن از تلفن خونگی استفاده بکنن. How did she get the children to agree to the experiment? چجوری راضیشون کرد که این آزمایش رو انجام بدن؟ She told them she was going to write a book about the experiment and that they would share in any profits that she made from the book. گفت که میخواد، در اصل گفت برایب کرده، گولشون زده یه جورایی، و بهشون گفته که قراره که یک کتاب بنویسه about the experiment and they would share in any profits that she made from the book. و گفته که میتونه باهاشون این سودش رو نصف بکنه. share in any profits that she made from the book. اون از کتابش هرچی به دست میاره رو بهشون قراره که بده. بریم پارت دومش رو گوش بدیم. گفته listen to part 2 in general. Was the experiment positive or negative? میگه که کلاً به صورت عمومی این خیلی مثلا پوزیتیو بود این آزمایش یا منفی بود. و بعد جواب اینها رو میخوایم بدیم. At the beginning the children complained that، اینا رو کامل بکنید. اولش بچه ها complain میکردن، شکایت میکردن که. Later they started to، بعدش شروع کردن به. Her son started to، پسر شروع کرد به. Their mother found it difficult to، مادرشون به نظرش خیلی سخت بود که. Another negative thing was that، یک نکته منفیش این بود که they now have new house rules. For example، الان یک قانونهای جدیدی دارن مثل. خب بریم گوش بدیم و لطفاً جواب اینا رو بدید.
5.20 Part 2.
So, what were the results? Was it a positive experience?
At the end of the book, Susan says that it was a positive experience in every way. At first, of course, the kids complained bitterly. They kept saying they were bored. But then they started to talk to each other again, to go and sit in each other's rooms and talk. They got interested in cooking and reading. They went to the movies together. They played CDs on the CD player, and they actually sat and listened to the music instead of just having music on their headphones all the time as background music. And Susan's 15-year-old son started playing the saxophone again. He'd stopped playing a few years before, but then he started taking lessons again and even started giving concerts. Oh, and the children said that they slept better.
Oh, well, that's good, yeah. What about the children's schoolwork? I mean, nowadays we sort of assume that everyone needs the internet to do research for homework and so on.
In fact, the children's report cards showed that they all improved. When they needed the internet, they used the computers at school or at college. The eldest daughter was in college. Or they went to friends' houses. But when they did their homework, they did it better than before because they weren't multitasking. They weren't doing homework and listening to music and sending messages all at the same time. So they concentrated better and their schoolwork improved.
What about Susan, the mother? Did she find it difficult to live without modern technology?
What she found most difficult was writing her weekly article for the newspaper because she had to do it by hand and not on her laptop. She says that at the beginning her hand used to really ache. She just wasn't used to writing by hand anymore. But that was just a small problem.
Any other negatives?
Well, of course, the phone bill for their landline was huge.
Has the experiment had a lasting effect?
Susan says that it has. She thinks that they all get along much better as a family. Her son is still playing the saxophone, and he sold his video console. They've all realized that we live in a digital world, but that we need to disconnect from time to time and to reconnect with the people around us. So they have new rules in the house, like no TVs in bedrooms and no TV in the kitchen where they eat, and no wasted hours on the internet.
Sounds great. That would be a good rule for me, too.
این هم از این قسمت جواب‌ها رو با هم چک کنیم و آیا به نظرتون مثبت بود یا منفی؟ در اول کار گفت که in general the experiment was positive، مثبت بود because Susan's family talked more، با هم دیگه بیشتر صحبت میکردن to each other، با هم دیگه and they did more activities، با هم و فعالیت‌های بیشتری انجام میدادن alone، تنهایی یا با هم و together. They slept better، بهتر میخوابیدن and the children's school work improve و کارهای بچه ها مدرسهشون improve پیدا کرد، یعنی ارتقا پیدا کرد، بهتر شد. Number 1 they were bored. گفته at the beginning children complained that they were bored. اونا خسته بودن، حوصله‌شون سر میرفت. Later they started، بعد شروع کردن to talk to each other again، با هم دیگه صحبت بکنن. Her son started to play the saxophone again. پسرشون شروع کرد به ساکسیفون زدن دوباره. و number 4 their mother found it difficult to write a weekly article for a newspaper. برای نوشتن آرتیکل به مقالش برای روزنامه یه ذره سختش بود. And number 5 another negative thing was that the phone bill for their landline was huge. قبض تلفنشون زیاد می اومد. And number 6 they now have new house rules. For example الان قانونهایی دارن مثل no TVs in bedroom، هیچ تلویزیونی توی اتاق نباید روشن بشه or in the kitchen and no wasted hours on the internet و یا توی مثلا کیچن آشپزخونه و no wasted hours و هیچ ساعتی حروم نمیشه توی اینترنت on the internet. خب گفته که now listen to part 3. What does each guest say he or she would miss most if he or she had to do the experiment. میگه که what does each guest، هر کدوم از این مهمون هایی که هستن دلشون برای چی تنگ میشه که از توی این آزمایشی که انجام دادن. سالی، اندرو، جرمی and کلوی. گوش بدین.
5.21 Part 3
Okay, so imagine you all did the experiment. What would you miss the most? Sally?
Well, I already live without the internet many weekends because we have a house in the country in the middle of nowhere where there's no internet service. So I know that what I would miss most is being able to Google information, like the phone number of a restaurant or what time a movie starts, or even, dare I say it, the sports scores. I don't have a TV, so I wouldn't miss that, but I would miss not having the internet.
Andrew?
Well, I just couldn't live without a computer or a laptop because I work from home, so I don't have an office to go to. And I absolutely need the internet too. I couldn't do the experiment. I just wouldn't be prepared to go to an internet cafe all day to work. Susan, the journalist who did the experiment, only had to write 1 column a week. But I work from home 8 hours a day.
Jeremy?
I think I could do it. I think I could easily live without any of these electrical gadgets at home. I mean, I have my office, so I could use the internet there. I don't use an iPod. I still prefer to listen to CDs.
You old dinosaur.
Yes, I know. And I don't watch much TV. I am very attached to my BlackBerry, but I wouldn't mind using a regular phone for 6 months. I don't think there's anything I'd miss too much.
And finally, Chloe, our only digital native.
Well, I'm sorry, but I just wouldn't be prepared to even try the experiment, not even for a week, let alone 6 months. I wouldn't be prepared to live without my phone. I use it for everything. Calling, music, the internet. So no, I wouldn't do it.
Not even if you were offered money?
It would have to be a huge amount of money. No, I'm definitely not going to do it.
خب جواب ها رو چک کنیم. سالی دلش برای چی تنگ میشه؟ The internet, Andrew a computer or laptop, Jeremy nothing, and Chloe her phone. She wouldn't do the experiment و انجامش اصلا نمیده. اینجا من یه چند تا نکته از توی این اسکریپتش، آدیو اسکریپتش بهتون بگم. گفته که what would she miss the most یا you miss the most. اینجا yeah, I already live with that. من در کل که همین الانش هم دارم بدون اینترنت زندگی میکنم. Many weekends. خیلی از هفته ها. In the middle of nowhere. توی ناکجا آباد. In the middle of nowhere. خیلی رایجه که اینو استفاده بکنیم. I work from home so I don't رفت بالا دوباره. I just wouldn't be prepared to go to an internet cafe all day to work. And the journalist who did the experiment only had to write one column a week. فقط میتونستم یه دونه مثلا قسمت رو بنویسم هر هفته. But I work from home 8 hours a day. حالا جرمی رو ببینیم. اینجا چیز جدیدی که میخوام بهتون بگم، دنبالش میگردم که ببینم اگر چه نکته‌ای داره بهتون بگم. اینجا گفته oh you old dinosaur، منظورش اینه که مثلا چه آدم مثلا هستی که قدیمی فکر میکنی. Don't watch much TV. I'm very attached to my BlackBerry. اینجا میگه من خیلی چسبیدم به این موبایلم، یعنی خیلی عادت دارم به موبایلم. But I wouldn't mind using a regular phone for 6 months. دوست نداشتم مثلا از این فون های رگولار استفاده بکنم، فون هایی که رایج هست استفاده بکنم، معمولی ها. I don't think there is anything I'd miss too much. فکر نمی کنم که خیلی بر چیزی دلم تنگ بشه. And finally Chloe are only digital native. Well I'm sorry but I just wouldn't be prepared to even try the experiment. من حتی آماده نیستم که انجامش بدم. Not even for a week. نه حتی برای یک هفته. چه برسه let alone 6 months. چه برسه به 6 ماه. این let alone هم مهمه. I wouldn't be prepared to live without my phone. I use it for everything, calling, music and the internet. بر همه چی استفاده میکنم. Not even if you were offered money. حتی میگه اگر که به پول پیشنهاد بشه هم انجام نمیدی. میگه it would have to be a huge amount of money. میگه باید پول زیادی باشه که من این رو انجام بدم. میگه no I'm definitely not going to do it. نه قطعا انجامش نمیدم. این قسمتمون تموم شد. فقط چند تا نکته اینجا داره. گفته useful language. وقتی نظرتون رو میخواین بدین، مثلا برای این سوال هایی که این بالا هست که speaking حساب میشه، گفته که اینجوری شروع بکنید. بگین the thing I miss most is خب I can't live without it because من نمیتونم بدون اون زندگی بکنم چون I need or I use it for من استفاده میکنم برای I'm addicted to something من معتاد یه چیزیم یا I'm attached to something دیدین اونجا نوشته بود من چسبیدم به فلان I depend on it for من بستگی داره که مثلا برای چی باشه. خب اینم از این قسمت و لطفاً اگر کامنتی دارین برای من بذارید. خوشحال میشم از نظرتون استفاده بکنم. تا جلسه آینده خدا نگهدار.